all CEOs, me included, we don't actually know what we're doing.
They're all sharks, so all you got to do, though, is know shark behavior.
I don't think we've ever talked about this before.
We can capture all of the wallet share.
First place you start is with the product.
That's just the first nut.
This is the Capital Stack.
Hello, everybody. This is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where I interview founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation. Today, I am speaking with Sebastian Gabor of Digitail, which is a practice management system for veterinarians. So, in other words, it's a vertical SaaS platform serving a sector that is near and dear to my heart. I've had a lot of great successes within that. And now I'm talking to Sebastian, who just raised a very nice Series A round, and want to hear more about Sebastian and what he's up to. So, Sebastian, how you doing?
Hey, David. Thank you for the invite. Great to be here. Currently in Barcelona. Just flew out of San Francisco a couple of days ago.
Okay. And then where's that accent from?
Romania. That's where I'm originally from.
Okay. And then you moved, and the company is based in Austin?
Company's based in, Delaware, and we have a great remote team. So we have team members across a lot of different places. Some are in Florida, Atlanta, Toronto, New York, Vancouver, and then in Europe and London and Romania.
Nice. And you just raised a Series A round?
We just raised Series A in Q1 of this year from Atomico and with follow-ons from all the existing investors.
That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit, Sebastian, about yourself and how you got into software and deciding to kind of go into the practice management side and veterinary medicine.
Got it. So this was into software was 2011 after business school. I just with a couple of friends, we wanted to build a project. At that time, there was the trend with social media networks. If you remember, there were social networks everywhere. And we started working on that, and afterwards we had more clients coming in that wanted to build different tools. So then it ended up being a huge development agency with 100 plus people working with Disney, Hasbro, and a lot of other companies. But in that journey, we learned a lot. However, and we learned that you can't do multiple things at the same time. And once you find something that you really care about, you need to double down. And by 2017, I exited from that company, and something that actually feel more meaning, that I provide more impact to the world and I get more meaning from. And in 2017 with Ruxandra, we adopted a puppy. I do remember you also had a lot of pets, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I had some. They died. I started having kids, which was in hindsight, in hindsight was a bad idea. I should have had more puppies.
Good one. So 2017, adopted a puppy, went to the vets, and when you have a puppy, you need to do the vaccination plan. And unfortunately, as we got the note of when we got this, we left it on a shelf. No one announced us for the next visit, so we ended up missing it, and we had to redo the entire plan. And that was super painful, not only for the health part, also time-wise. So we were just asking, why isn't the system better? Why can't you offer a better experience? And what we realized by talking with the hospital was that, unfortunately, we don't have the team members. They don't have the tools to offer a better experience for their pet fans. And that's how we started building a system that can provide them the tools they need to focus on doing what they love while their clients can get the experience that a millennial would need nowadays.
That's fantastic. So one thing that I really want to dive deep on today is the concept of making a platform and replacing an existing incumbent platform, which is extremely difficult to do. And it's kind of like one of the DWP Capital's grand, rules is don't try to push a platform against an incumbent platform. And for obvious reasons, it's very, the switching cost is very, very painful. These platforms are very sticky and they make it very difficult. Yep. And you're going to have to win on price, right, in order to kind of motivate that. And I'm not sure if that's Digitail's story, but, I'd love to kind of hear how you thought about the incumbent players. Now, in the veterinary space, there's a couple of like legacy software companies. Some of them are holdcos, Shine, where companies go to die. We have, Patterson, IDEX. They all kind of have their own version of, on-prem that looks like cloud-like solutions. So how did you think about coming up and putting a platform and convincing veterinarians to take a shot?
Yeah, definitely wasn't easy, but I'll tell you how we see the market. In 2020, when we started focusing on the US, when we started working with the first clients there, we realized that 80% of the market was on-premise systems. So 80% of all the hospitals in the US were working with Avimark, Kavich, Cornerstone, and all the old systems, and 20% were already looking at cloud solutions. So the trend was already in the market that people wanted to go off on-premise and go into cloud, and there were for various reasons. One, the servers were crashing. The clients were demanding a better experience and they weren't able to offer it. They started working with too many add-ons. So they had one system that had 5 different add-ons just to have online appointment system and a couple of other tools. And it became really bloated. So that was the moment when we came with the value proposition of an all-in-one tool, one partner that can get you end-to-end where you need to be. And that was super attractive for vets. And at the beginning, it was really, really difficult because, again, we were a couple of team members. They haven't heard of us. There was a big leap of faith of who's Digitail and what are they trying to do. And it took a while to build that trust. But once we got one vet, they were super happy. They started referring us, and then we started having word of mouth. And now, in just a couple of years, we work with over 800 hospitals. We also started working with the bigger vet groups, so the multi-location GP type of clinics. And it was mostly the community that helped us grow.
Yeah. So you just had to do it just like everybody else. You had to cross the chasm. You had to go to early adopters, probably onesie Tuesdays,
Exactly.
Companies that probably had more of an inclination to move to cloud, and you kind of proved out your value. And as you made jumps, you continue to build on the platform. Because I could imagine being a startup, you have to focus on, if you want to be all in one, that means you're probably doing everything, at 50% of what some of the deeper platforms are doing, just based on company size. Like, you can't out engineer, at that time. Right. So how did you come across and think like, you are, you're getting we're going to give you all the things, light versions, but over time, like, this is our grand vision. Was there kind of like those kinds of conversations that you had to talk about? Did you have to sell futures and roadmap and come along with us on the journey in order for them to kind of buy into it? Yeah,
absolutely. Building a PIMS, I think, is the most excruciating task because it's never enough. Like with every clinic that we talk, they'll always want, more features, and it's reality. The PIMS needs to do everything at the end of the day. And we've always been having this huge roadmap that we tried building. I think the key thing, and this is where our team did a really good job, and I'm really proud to work with such colleagues, is that they were able to understand what are the key problems that the clinics were having and focus on those. Because in general, if you look at most users, they will want everything in the world, but they will really need one or two things to get them really, really well. And if you get those, they're going to accept some things mediocre and some other things not being there at the moment. So that was one of the balancing act that we had to do, is always identifying what are the really, really important things. And there's one advantage of being an all-in-one tool, because there's things that currently you can't get out of integrated partners. So for example, when you go to a clinic that uses Digitail, the clinic doesn't need to manually export anything, to manually send you the medical records or send you the recommendations. All of that happens as you close the medical record. So you end the visit, and then everything is exported and personalized for the pet parent directly in the app or via email, or depending on what they use. And all of that is frictionless. So those are things that we were able to do that really came as a plus, on the all-in-one aspect. Yeah, and they were able to wait.
Yeah, that's on-prem plus 10x value, right? Which they couldn't have done based on the original architecture of not being on cloud.
Yeah. So that was the balancing act.
Yeah, what did you learn, like, from an MVP perspective? Like, what were table stakes that you needed to approach the market? What did you learn, like, the customer said they needed, but they didn't need, and how did you navigate that prioritization process? Because you have to come with, I'm assuming, like, scheduling and, there's a couple key,
Everything,
components and
inventory,
modules.
reporting, finance, consent forms, estimates, everything. So I think big learnings was that first you have 4 different stakeholders in your standard animal hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically you have the vet owner, the practice manager, the vet tech, and the CSR. And they all need different things. And they all have the decision-making power. So you need to balance that and understand who's the more important stakeholder in the specific practice and who do you need to make sure that they get what they need at the beginning. So that was one. Second is that we always got requests for additional reports or additional reminders or additional notifications. But at the end of the day, what we saw is that they were used for probably 1 week. And then people weren't actually having the workflows because they were busy doing the thing they love, taking care of patients. So what was really, really important was to make sure that the day-to-day workflow works really well, from booking an appointment, doing the medical notes with templates and saving that time and getting the patient out there, out of the practice with all the information that they needed. If you do that really well, then you can start building on top the rest. Mm-hmm. That was basically the biggest learning. That took a while because initially when we started working with clients, they were all, we can't work with you unless you have this feature. So we had to build that feature. They might have used it or not, but you needed to have it in the moment of signing the contract.
Right. So yeah, there is a perceived need versus an actual need, right? And it's not reasonable, right? Because it's not backed by data. Because buyers don't usually buy things on data; they buy things on emotion, right?
Absolutely. Like one thing I can tell you with the app for the pet parents, what we realized is that initially pet parents were downloading the app. And they were using it once per year for the annual exam and annual vaccines. Then once we added the online booking system, they started also using it to book appointments. So it was a couple of more times per year. Then we started adding learning center. So they were using it for at least 1 or 2 weeks after the visit. And then after we added chat, we started having a much higher uptake because then you started enabling communication with the practice. But it was, again, a gradual growth towards understanding, what's valuable for the long. So what's a sticky feature versus what's an engagement feature?
Yeah. What's a capability, right? What's a capability? Capabilities, generally not everyone adopts them. If they adopt them, they just they lose their novelty over time.
Correct.
So how do you think about pricing?
Pricing. Our approach was to simplify it, and because vets are again, they haven't spent years and years of business schools or understanding how to manage a practice. They came into it in order to help patients. So if you go at them with a really complicated price structure, they won't really understand it. So we tried to simplify it and to have a price per vet that takes into account the volume, right? So the larger the practice is, the more effort on our side to support it. So we're trying to reflect for that. But as an operating system, you do have additional revenue streams, right? There's partners that you can integrate. There's payment processing, buy now, pay later. There are a lot of financial products that you can also operate into that. We're still working towards enabling more, but again, we have a solid foundation where we are at the moment.
Okay. And so where do you see the future is? I'm sure there's plenty of areas to grab, incumbent players, right?
Mm-hmm.
The industry got rapidly consolidated. So how do you think about that? Like, I feel like, these aggregators, these private equity aggregators that bought a ton of veterinary practices that aren't, integrated, that could probably be a huge opportunity for you to get them on kind of one enterprise system.
Exactly. So at the moment, if the way, again, we look at the market is that 75% is independent GPs and 25% is the aggregators, the consolidated market. And we already work with with almost 20 out of we say that there are around 200 GPs. Again, plus minus, we don't have the hard numbers. But our focus right now is to be able to work with those with aggregators, because what's happening in the market is that they ended up buying a lot of clinics. So let's say you're a PE, you now have 100 clinics under your management, and you realize they're all on different PIMs. So at the end of the month, when you want to get reports, you're stuck because you need an entire crew of people just to grab reports, aggregate them, consolidate them, and for you to get insights. Forget about getting them on a weekly basis. You need every time, on a monthly basis, have that. And there are a couple of PEs that did a really good job at having pipelines, but the majority of them are really struggling and having to build really big teams in order to just support that data reporting part. And this doesn't take into account standardizing operations. So when they want to change prices for clinics, or they want to support a clinic and setting a different SOP or protocols, they need to manually go into each system and do it. And that's just a nightmare when you want to grow fast and to be able to increase efficiencies. So that's why at the moment we're one of the only solutions for all-in-one. Yeah.
Do you feel like how would you say, like, from an aggregator perspective, and you could include the corporates, right? Not just the PE, but the corporates, the NVAs, the Mars, the Bainfields. Yeah. What would you say the spread is of those that are trying to, like, vertically integrate them into, like, one cohesive unit with one brand, one pricing schematic, versus kind of just saying, like, listen, we bought all these assets, right? They're SMBs at best, right? It's not worth the time to try to integrate them. Let's just kind of have all the companies together and, try to streamline the back end as much as we can, but kind of create a hold co and then sell that to the next PE group. How do you see that market?
So I still have a narrow view on that market, but from what I've seen so far is that the constraint is buying clinic. Well, currently after, like, with the whole economic situation, it's more of having money to buy more clinics, and that's why the market is still at a halt at the moment. But when money is and so when there's capital in the system, the challenge is finding clinics that want to sell. And for you to convince them to sell, you need to give them the promises of you're not going to influence their workflow. You're going to give them freedom. You're going to do all
which is all bullshit, right?
It's
not going to influence
difficult.
you. Yeah, it's not. They're not going to influence your workflow for the year that you work there, and then they're going to.
So that's why I've seen a couple of corporates that are doing a really good job of supporting the clinic centrally. There's still a minimum workflow and standardization, but yes, most of them at some point they will need to introduce better processes or standardized process across. But probably that's more of a maturity for that chain. When you're in buying mode, you're not going to focus on that. When you're in increasing performance mode, then that's more going to be the moment when you're going to focus more on standardizing processes.
Do you feel like the vets that are holding out are just kind of like, well, 2 years ago, my buddy just sold his practice for 15 to 20 times EBITDA. Why can't I get that price? Are you kind of seeing that getting played out in the market?
Definitely.
Is there a reprice? Is there a repricing happening?
Yes. I mean, there's two sides of this. One is the pressure that comes now on the groups that acquire that high multiples to increase efficiency to justify those multiples. And then on the other side, exactly what you mentioned with clinics that no longer want to sell because just 1 year ago, half a year ago, their friends sold at crazy multiples. Probably this will change. So again, give it 1 more year and we'll see the market starting again to work.
Yeah. Do you think that the demand for pet parents and like this move towards animals is going to kind of override? Like, I always think about these businesses that get super levered up, right? And they buy things inorganically. Mm-hmm. They generally are subjected to a lot of covenants, right? And labor costs are going up, right? So their margins are getting thinner. There's only so much capacity you can have in a clinic, right? There's not, you're capped by location. It's a retail business. Mm-hmm. And so is the demand for pets, is that going to overshadow some of the natural headwinds of margin thinning with laborers and potential covenants, right? Because none of these private equity people want to put more equity into these businesses, so it's got to give somewhere. Or is the tailwind still so strong that the demand isn't letting up?
So there's two things. One is the tailwind is definitely strong, and the fact that there's still a shortage of vets, so you basically have over demand for how much supply you have in the market, and this will continue for the following years. Pet care is still estimated to grow to 300 billion if you look at all the reports. So 230, how much it is now, to 300 billion by 2030. And this will also help. What I'm seeing that even now, in a time when the economic situation is not great, pet parents are still spending, and they're still doing, maybe they're cutting down on some premium accessories or some items, but they're still doing the medical preventive care stuff. And I think the more important part is that what we're not seeing at the moment is that as pet care evolves, there's new services that are coming up on preventive care, telemedicine, remote care at home, empowering the pet parents to do more. Now with AI services that you can bundle. So all of those will also enable new revenue streams for the vets. And that's still early days, but we're seeing now, especially in the vet groups that are thinking more about this, and the early adopters and the GPs, on how they can better support the pet parents at home, and how can that transform into a wellness plan or a subscription model for the hospital.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Wellness subscription, I don't think anyone's done that really well, right, in the business.
Still trying.
Yeah, still trying.
Yeah.
Pet insurance, still low adoption rate, kind of in the business.
3% in that range, yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So,
and it's insane if you compare to Europe. Like if you know in Sweden, it's 90% adoption for dogs, 70% for cats. In the UK, it's 70% for dogs, 50% for cats. That's the insurance adoption compared to the 3% that we have in the US.
Is it just because there's no buying power from the insurance to actually make margin because there's just so much demand?
It's a huge combination of factors. First, I think we need to simplify the process. That's one of the things that needs to happen in the US, because you still need to file claims manually, and you don't understand what's actually deductible. So it's a huge process of like trying to navigate that all the situation. And then also it's probably culture in terms of, I've seen pet parents that once they have a big bill to pay, they see the value, and next time they're going to have the insurance. But until you get to that situation, you'll probably ignore it unless there's more education that's happening. And unfortunately, again, on the other side, vets and the staff from the hospitals, they don't have time to talk about the importance of insurance and how to be financially solvent for your pet. So those are discussions that nobody has with the pet parents. So of course, we can't expect them to overnight.
They're not incentivized. They don't care about money. They don't want to sell anyway, right? You know what I mean? You're reluctant to get them to charge what they should be charging because they're clipping the nails while they're talking. So God forbid you try to get them to upsell anything else, right? It's probably very difficult. Where do you think
the discounts? You should see the discounts that clinics are.
Dude, it's unreal. Just because they ask, you know what I mean? They're just, the one thing I think that's affable about vets is that at least vets know they're not good. They're not good business people. Like doctors think they're good business people, but they're not good business people. Right? Vets have a humility about them, which I think is very affable. But tell me, if I was to give you $10 million, Sebastian, to invest somewhere within vet in like the software kind of space, like what's the emerging area that you think has a lot of legs?
That's an awesome question. So my 2 cents at the moment is by far what you can do with AI in the space. So that's where we also invest as a company now. Time, and we have a design partner group with which we've developed an AI assistant called Tails that works on both pre-screening and triaging for pet parents, but also internally in the hospital for medical support and automation. And I've seen that training those LLMs in a way that they can actually provide support for both stakeholders is insanely valuable. And I think the industry will go that way in the upcoming years. And just like if you see the rate of innovation, it's on one side scary, but on the other side super exciting. And especially in an industry that moves slow, this is like really pushing it to the next level.
So are we talking like diagnostics?
one aspect is diagnostics. First is more triaging.
You don't need FDA, right, with pets. So you can probably get two answers a lot quicker.
Correct. But there's also, just to be careful about this one, it's not about giving a medical diagnostic, because that part only the vet will be able to do. But it's able to support the vets into getting to the diagnostic and reconfirming it at least, or helping when you're a vet and you see 50 patients a day. By the end of the day, you're going to be a bit tired, and you need some help, and just someone helping you with the decision making process. So that's one. And if there would be another category, I would say wearables.
Oh, interesting.
Because if we look at the future, again, the future where you want more data to be able to take more data-driven decisions and to support pets at home, that's going to be a good good component of it. And we see already with the app behaviors where pet parents go at home and they log weight, they log information that afterwards the vet can check in their annual visit.
Cool. Sebastian, I want to give you a couple canned questions before we end today. What is the best piece of business advice you've ever gotten?
So many. I would start with focus. So that's the one that I took to heart. Instead of doing 20 things, focus on doing one thing really well and then move to the next. Super important.
Awesome. And what's the best book you've ever read?
Never Split the Difference. Or Atomic Habits. Darn. Okay, that's also a tough one.
That is a good one. Both of those are really, really good. Cool. And where do you see Digitail going in the next couple years?
So we have a clear shot of becoming one of the leading practice management system in the space and becoming the go-to OS for pet care. There's a lot of execution that needs to happen, but I feel that we're at the right time, at the right place. So hopefully when we talk again in the next years, we're going to see a clear path to 25% plus market share.
Awesome. Sebastian, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, please tell a friend and subscribe. We drop an episode every Tuesday. And I will see you guys next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.